Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is David Caspillo. I'm the host of Comerit Data and Analytics podcast. And today we're going to be interviewing Matt Florian, the director of the cloud analytics practice at Comerit. How's it going, Matt?
It's going pretty good, Dave. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Just want to see how these podcast things here go. We'll have to edit that out, Kylie. But anyways, hey Matt, so can you introduce yourself and how you got into the data field?
Sure. So I've been doing data as my profession since I got started in college by
Did you
mistake.
really?
I did by mistake. I got started as a work study where I worked in a laboratory for veterinary sciences and as a work study, and I got thrown into managing a DBase and like Oracle 5 I had worked with. And this is pretty good for a political science student. And that work progressed on. I did more work studies that involved data, and eventually, being political science, I thought I was going to go and become a attorney. But I had somebody give me an intervention, train me in Oracle and other data sciences and other data practices. And from that point on, I have been a data practitioner. So I've been doing this since the early 90s and continue on till today. And just, I have an absolute passion for data.
So let me ask you, were you going to be a political science major and go into politics first?
I was a political science major. Still, that's what I graduated with, was political science. Later on, got an MBA in e-commerce, but it's poli sci with an emphasis in analytics is what I came out of college with. So I was going to be a lawyer, but like I
Oh,
said,
got it.
there was an intervention, so I never became one.
So what made data so exciting? Like that's actually a really good question I have for you is like, why is that so exciting? How do you make a career out of data?
It's interesting because I fell in love with data when I was in political science. It was being able to understand the politics of why somebody does something, why a policy and a person's reaction response to it. And we did a lot of geographic and demographic type of analytics in college around political decisions and political ideologies. And that just got me really excited about data and what it could tell. And data always told a story. So when I got to use data in other areas of business and operations, the same thing happened. Data tells a story. And no matter where I'm at, it's always a story to tell. And being able to unleash that story, man, it's exciting.
What what other data areas have you worked with?
I've never been really constrained by industry. So I have worked with data back in the telco days of Baby Bells, US West, and Quest that don't even exist anymore. But we did data and analytics for them on call detail records and fun stuff like that. I've built an oncology database for Emory University that went and studied clusters of cancers and ended up winning awards for its innovation, what we've done. I've done data analytics for the public sector in studying healthcare fraud, Medicaid fraud, and built and developed patents for Medicaid fraud. I've done it for workforce management. There's the ability to go in and apply patterns to understand data, regardless of industry, is really what I've honed in on. And you find that one industry leads to knowledge in another industry. And it's a beautiful thing, quite honestly.
How does a person figure out that I would be good as a data scientist or data practitioner or a data architect? What
Uh,
what do you think inside of you makes you like I lined up perfectly with this type of work?
I guess ask yourself, do you like puzzles? Do you like
Really?
solving a puzzle? And that, because that's what data is. And it's interesting. I don't like jigsaw puzzles, but I love puzzles. If I'm going to play a game on my phone, it tends to be a puzzle. It's go and solve some mystery, connect dots A, B, and C when all you know are dots A and F. It's such an interesting thing to follow and do that you're you are a systems thinker. I think the best people I know in data think in systems. They don't think linearly. Data in working in analytics is a very abstract concept. And if you can think in that abstract concept and think in systems, you'll find that data just makes sense because you start categorizing, you put it into a system. It is
So
a cool thing to watch.
what kind of systems, when you say systems, what are you referring to?
Data isn't Data doesn't just appear, right? Data comes to us because an event, something created this data.
Can
Something
you
happened.
tell me what kinds of things create data?
You walk into the front door of a store, you created data because now you have entry and foot traffic. That's data. You go and fill out your census form. That's data. You took an action. It's that data in itself operates in its own system to say this is data about census. But then that census data can interact with other systems. Tell me about my marketing in this particular demographic area and how my demographics of who my customers are matches up with the demographics from the census. Those are all data, and they tell stories of their systems.
Going way back to your political science days, where were you guys getting data for your political science studies?
Census was a lot of it. The government, a lot of people give census data and manufacturing and sentiment analysis data back to the government quite a bit on a regular basis. So we had that data to work with. And then there's a whole slew of survey data for analysis of sentiment analysis, of political opinion analysis. So we had that data as well. Plus, world socioeconomic data, which helped us go and do analysis on policy.
So today we have lots of ways in which we can collect kinds of very strange, very personal types of data now on people. Some people call it a conspiracy, but what are your thoughts on data that's collected on you through, say, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn? Do those things collect data on people?
That's the whole business model, is to collect data. And when you engage with a company like Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and you engage knowing that your information is collected and what you share it's not a secret. You know it. So a person has control of what they do and say and share on those platforms by choosing to participate and not participate, and how much activity you engage on.
But yeah, but from a big corporate standpoint, like when you work with big corporations now, is it fairly anonymous? It's more of a collective pool of data. They're not like looking at me specifically, or are they?
I don't know the underlying systems that they look at. I know that from a legality perspective, now the data is often anonymized. It's you as an individual, as a dot and a blip of the analytics, don't mean as much as the individual. It's a persona.
Yeah.
It's what personas and what other personas are like you. And that's the beautiful thing about data, is that you can go and build personas of people to make certain assumptions, but they're not always correct. No persona can tell you the full story of who you actually are and what your opinions are going to be. But it uses data to inform and help make a judgment.
Now, these big enterprise companies, they don't need to go to a LinkedIn or a Facebook to get data. They also get data on their clients or their customers through their own mechanisms also. Are there other data collection, maybe devices or video cameras? How are they getting their data on their clients?
Data can come in from any number of areas. I worked with an agricultural client not too long ago. Data comes in from tractors. Just what is being applied to the field, when is it being applied, how much is going into this geospatial sector of the fields as they apply chemicals, apply the seeds, what went where. The information come in from so many different places, and right now we have everybody say there's a flood of data coming in, and there is, but we actually know what we're doing most of the time on that flood of data. You always will have outliers of people just going harvesting information they don't know what to do with. I'm not so worried about them so much. It's they you, they'll make guesses. Sometimes they'll be right. A clock is right twice a day. They may be right sometimes, but they're probably wrong most of the time.
Matt, we're about halfway through our interview, and you put the perfect segue into the question I have about what are some of your best data practices. I think this would be important because there is so much data. Data just keeps growing in volumes. I think I reached 2 terabytes of personal data myself.
Oh, that's a baby bout. You need to take more pictures. Best data practices. So I think today, one of the best data practices that is out is to start collecting and categorizing data that you have. It's the interesting about it is that we don't always know when or what data connects to other data. We know data that operates within the system, the processes that created it, and it tells us and informs us a lot. But when we're able to connect data from one process and system into another, like your sales data with a, say, Google Analytics behavioral data, and I described this to some clients as right brain, left brain activity, it gives you additional insight. And you don't always know when that's going to be. So the worst thing you could do is to not collect it. So the best practice would be collect that data, categorize it, hold it, store it, and know its changes. And then you can actually act on it because you can't recreate it once it's lost.
So, are there actual methodologies, named methodologies for data and analytics best practices? Are there any good books you'd recommend?
So there's some really good books on just data engineering, and there's a book that came out last year from O'Reilly, the Data Engineering Handbook, and that's been a really good seminal book on that topic. And from a methodology, you hear a lot of folks talk about data lake, and in its concept, data lake is correct. In its execution, data lakes are usually a swamp because they dump data into online stores like in AWS or in Azure or in Google, and then the data just accumulates, but it's never truly cataloged and become actionable. So you have a data lake that is architected and intentful is significantly better than a data lake that you just dump data into.
So that kind of leads right into it. Maybe this is wrapping up. What are some of the worst practices as opposed to best practices you've seen out there?
Worst practice, I'd say some of the worst practices are hire an army of data engineers and data scientists without an actual goal of what your data platform is. It's you can't act on data unless you actually understand what your parts are. It's like saying, I'm going to go and build a car. So just give me all of the metal and pieces of rubber, and I'm going to put this thing together without a plan as to what that car looks like. And you're not going to get it. And that's what a lot of people do with data. They dump it into a data lake and then say, all right, make something of this. It's raw material. You need to actually have some data products to work with so that you can do something consistently, repeatably, and find value inside of it.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on a spot. If I'm the CEO of a major corporation, retail, let's say, do I hire a data scientist or a data architect first?
Data architect first.
Why?
It's not even really a biased answer. It's the data architect will give you a foundation of setting up the data. The architect will go and lay out the environment that will align to your business goals of wanting data products. And it'll then give a laboratory for a data scientist to work in. The scientist has to have a laboratory in which they're working from. They're not just out there trying to extract raw material themselves. They collect that raw material. And that's what the data architect's doing. It's collecting and organizing that raw material. So then a scientist can come in and start exploring and finding relationships that the business may not know exists.
So the data scientists, they come in and shouldn't they be around to tell me what I should be architecting?
The business tells you what you should be architecting. The business tells you what the context of the data means. Data scientist doesn't know the context of the data. The data scientist is actually trying to find and discover interconnectedness between processes, between internal and external processes or internal and external factors. The business who's just running their day to day, Moses going, man, I just want to look at my reports and tell me how did I do today versus yesterday. That's really important. But they tell you the context because data matters within the context in which it was created, which goes back to that whole system discussion. That system gave it context. The data scientist, they're explorers. They look at that, but they have to still, even the best explorer had a map. That's what the data architect is. It's a map for the scientist to go and navigate and then figure out where they're going to go off the map to go and find something new.
So it's an important point, though, that the business is your key initiator, really, right? They can help and work with the data architects the easiest because they understand the context. Is that correct?
It's correct because they're the ones who actually created the data. It was their
Right.
process, their events. They're the ones that made it. So they have the best relationship back to what it means. So that's where you actually start.
So when you're out there helping clients specifically directly, who do you work with in the organization or the org structure when you come into these projects? Who's your
So most of the times IT hires us,
interesting?
but then we go and work with the business to be that bridge of IT and business because we will always consult to the IT organizations that IT does not own this data. The generation of that data was owned by the business. And so business needs to be a equal partner, an equal collaborator in understanding and building data products that are going to move your business to the next step forward.
So is that part of your consulting is to help really bridge the IT department and the business together in these projects?
To bring them together into a collaborative environment that lets them succeed. That is a lot of what we do.
That's awesome. So I want to talk to you a little bit of wrapping up or towards wrapping up. You've been a consultant now for quite some time. What do you think you'll do after you're done helping save the world through data and analytics?
Oh my gosh. So my exit plan from this wild ride of data has I'll probably go and pick up a career in which I don't make any money, fly fishing guide. Quite honestly, it's my passion. I see so many similarities between data and fly fishing that moving from one to the other is a logical jump. And because I still get to do the things I love, which is I get to teach people, I get to take them on a journey, I get to go and spend the day talking, just discussing whatever's going on and be outside. So that is more than likely what we're going to be doing.
So help me out. Give me an example of how data architecting data modeling and analytics, how does that integrate with fly fishing? Or give me an example. How are the two related? I'm very curious now.
When you fly fish, and I go fly fishing from rafts, so I fish rivers and I guide the river. And that's what I do as an architect is I guide this journey for a data journey with clients. And as I'm guiding, I can be going down the same river that I've floated 20 times. And every time I float, it's going to be different. There's a lot that's the same. The bends and turns of the geography are the same, but what lies underneath that river, the rocks, the debris, things that I can't see, those are the things that makes the journey adventurous. But at the same time, having the experience to know how to identify it, how to see it early, stops you from getting hung up on a rock that you didn't see. And the same thing is about data. And the same thing when you consult is the experience of being able to see the rocks ahead of you that are going to get you caught up on your journey and stop you and become a blocker and you rip your boat apart if you're not careful. Those are the kind of things that I do with clients. And that's why the two segue so nicely together because they are one and the same.
So it sounds like we need to take our clients out on a fly fishing trip in order that for them to truly understand the nature of data?
I am all for that trip. I got the rods. They're sitting over there ready to go. The boat is ready to go. Just a little bit ice off the water and we're ready to float.
So let me ask you in closing, what do you see where are things headed in 2023?
I'm really optimistic for 2023. 2023 is having a lot more conversations in the data world about the resurgence of the importance of data modeling and having a data foundation, which for those of us that have been in data architecture for so long, seeing that come back and being back in vogue, it never should have been gone, but being back in vogue and having conversations with the enterprise about the role of data modeling and how to do it pragmatically. I think that will give foundation to the enterprise on how to build a good data program and build data products across global enterprises that give you insights and your predictive and prescriptive analytics to run your business.
Last few minutes, is there a role for artificial intelligence with all this data modeling?
AI comes into play all the time. It's in the simplest and the most complex. We see that in manufacturing, AI using and training those models to identify your defects on the line and get rid of things that the human eye can't, to count faster than the human can count. These are all really important things. I have a friend who developed a vision AI tech for the ski industry to be able to identify quickly before a lift operator can see that somebody is clicked over and is about to have an injury. So a risk aversion AI. There's so many amazing things that can be done with it, and we have the data to support it. It's only going to get bigger.
So we're going to have to definitely bring up some of those topics in our future podcasts. What other types of things can we expect to hear over the coming months and years in this podcast?
You're going to hear me talk a lot about data architecture, data engineering, and the foundational pieces of being a good data manager and good data steward of the enterprise. And all of that is needed in order for us to even have the conversations about AI, about machine learning, and about moving the business forward from a data products. I'm a big fan of the principles of data mesh for global enterprises. And there's other data modeling techniques and approaches from the data that I'm strong, really heavy on in the automation, the balance between automation and hand coding. And there is a balance. Most people do one, all the way the other. And I'm a bit more pragmatic about it. So when it comes to data, I can be a bit of a curmudgeon and not really want to jump on things that are shiny, but use things that are pragmatic. You take bits and pieces of what we know, because that's how you're going to move your whole enterprise forward.
So, last question. If there is a name or a person out there that you would want to interview with respect to that or anything, is there someone out there you're thinking about?
It would be, there's a couple of people that I think really highlight that area of that pragmatic side on the automation piece. And it's a young company, Coalesce, put out by Armand Petrosin. And that is, their whole focus is on automating all the way up to the last mile, right? If you think about data as part of a supply chain, you move as much as you can for the lowest cost, and then the last mile is where you spend the money on a lot of smaller vehicles to move. And that big automation, I think that Coalesce has really nailed that space in there. And then I'd probably also want to talk with some folks that have been doing innovations over in the AI.
Folks, that's a wrap. Appreciate you all jumping in and joining in our interview with Matt Florian. Matt, wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us, and we're looking forward to many more podcasts in the future with you.
It was fun, Dave. Look forward to talking more.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.